Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Chioma Naomi and I'm so happy that you're here. Today we'll actually be talking about a little more serious topic. Not that all my videos aren't serious, because obviously you should take what I say seriously, okay? We'll be talking about more trauma and healing focused stuff. Today we'll be talking about abandonment issues, specifically my own abandonment issues, and really just to make myself an example, trying to live by what I talked about in one of my earlier videos about how sometimes your life is meant to be an example for others. And I don't mind being transparent with some of the things that I have healed from. And it's actually taken me a long time to get to this place where I'm actually willing to be transparent and share things about myself and my life, but more so in hopes of how it can be helpful to other people. This isn't meant to be a trauma dump by any means, but I am going to be pretty straightforward about how I felt. And I want to be so serious. This was really cathartic for me to script and to write up what I was going to say, just for the sole reason that I was having to go back into some of the things that I had experienced in order to really just have an understanding of it. And writing is always something that's really therapeutic for me. It was transmutational, I guess I could say, in a lot of ways. So hopefully the things I share in this video are helpful to you and can shine a light on some of the things that you may not have known about yourself, because ultimately this is a result of my reflection. And I hope it inspires you to be reflective as well and look at yourself, look at your own life to say, okay, how can I continue to grow more? And by no means am I finished or am I even perfect, right? But I am human and we all have a story, and it's up to you to decide that your story is worth sharing. So let's get into it. So first things first, I didn't even know I had abandonment issues for a long time. Like I thought I was just living, haha, kiki, yeah, let's do it. But no, I thought about possibly pulling up my own birth chart astrologically, because in my last video, we looked at Beyonce's birth chart, but I would love to look at mine at the end too. So we'll see how I feel if I actually include the astro part about this too. So to begin, let's acknowledge that the only people that are able to truly abandon us are the ones that we love. If someone has a special importance in our life, those are probably the only people that are going to be able to cause real true damage that is emotional, right? Physical damage, anyone can hurt us physically, right? But emotional damage, you have to have some type of tie or connection to them in a deep way, or maybe even, let's say, an expectation on them to some degree for them to be able to hurt you. We aren't really going to have trauma with a stranger that we meet on the street. They don't really have the capacity to hurt us in the same way that our loved ones do. So when we are young, we are especially impressionable, right? So how we relate to the adults in our environments shapes how we interact and relate to others. So in my personal experience, I grew up in a single parent household with just my mother as my primary caretaker. I have a younger sister as well, but my mom was more focused on providing material support and comfort rather than actual emotional support, right? And this, by the way, is something I have spoken about with my mom. She is aware of this. She's acknowledged this. So I'm not just like outing the people in my life, but I'm willing to go there so that other people can be inspired to also go there too. So my father was not in my life, and this sparked a lot of concern surrounding my self-esteem, like more so when I was younger. It's developed a lot more now that I'm an adult, and even just in my early teen years, I started to find the ways that I shine. But it was really hard for me to be self-expressive, and a lot of times a father wound shows up in that way. As I was younger, those self-esteem struggles with the why wasn't I good enough? Why wasn't my dad in my life? Why did other children have both parents, or at least parents that they got to see and I did not? That was something that I eventually had to make peace with, and it really did take time. For a long time, I looked at the world through the lens of someone that was unwanted, and this actually echoed in friendships. And I actually think this is where a lot of my abandonment wounds and abandonment trauma kind of compounded. It was made exponentially more apparent and more painful dealing with friends when I was younger, but let's keep going. So it started when I was really young. I always had a best friend every school year, someone that I bonded with and would rely upon socially. We were very close in that way. But in 5th grade is when the betrayal started, okay? So twice in 5th grade. So there was one friend, and then there was this group of friends that I was really close with. And this was the first time in my life where I had like a network of people. I'd been at that school from 2nd grade all the way up into 5th grade. I had known these people for a long time, but I had friends that I was really close with that I would spend a lot of time with that I knew from 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, let's say. 4th and 5th grade, I started having other friends. It was really just an issue of possession. There were 2 friends that I was really close with that ended up not liking me so much or being really offended that I chose to go hang out with this new friend that I had started building a connection with. And it went awry. It went awry. They ostracized me, essentially, all for later that school year, the friend that I chose to go hang out with to ostracize me too. And it really just all rooted from being misunderstood. A lot of my abandonment wounds are kind of centered around people not understanding me and then discarding me. So almost every school year after that, my friends would stop talking to me and I would be cast out. So it happened in 5th grade twice. It happened in 6th grade, it happened in 7th grade, and then 8th grade it didn't happen. Thank God. But then in 8th grade, I was doing some sneaky, I was being weird. I became desperate for friends and attention that I eventually eventually in 8th grade, this is what I'm talking about, ended up taking my friend's boyfriend. Wow, sticky situation, sticky situation. And the reason I share those things now is because I don't let these instances define me. And that was like 15 years ago at this point. I know myself far more now, and I'm much more grounded morally, right? The things you do when you're that young, like I've had to forgive myself for those things and also cut a loss for that, right? Because I lost that friend, and the way that happened and the reason for that happening showed up in such a weird way. But I will say, right, I have to be clear and transparent about this. It's like when you have abandonment issues and abandonment wounds, right, it makes you show up in ways that maybe you wouldn't be so proud of, that aren't necessarily like you, right? You wouldn't really consider that to be like yourself. And I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be validated. I wanted to be seen, right? Because a lot of my issues rooted from being misunderstood. So it makes you act in ways that aren't conducive to what you actually want. You end up hurting other people because you're hurting. And I have also been hurt even in my adult life by someone who was also hurting and probably just had issues with his own abandonment and attachment for that sake. So that you start acting in ways that don't make sense, right? But it's coming from a place of lack of consciousness, right? You're not conscious about what you're actually doing and your impulses and your drives for things that you'll do to feel connected. Because at the core of it, we're human beings and we want to feel connected. And by no means do I condone cheating or like being a side piece or anything like that. But I had to learn, and I've since never done that again. I started to become more conscious of those things at 14 when those things were happening. Thank God, right? I didn't have to realize it in my adult life because Jesus, that would probably be so much more damaging to my psyche. But I even disciplined myself in a way. It was so weird after I kind of came out of that situation, but we can talk more about that later. Back then, being abandoned left me seeking connection in the wrong people. That's really what that came down to, right? Really just wanting to be connected to someone and seeking it out in places that I probably shouldn't have been. So because of my upbringing, I placed so much importance on feeling connected to friends that it changed the way that I related to people. I felt starved at home, so I needed the connection from others, and it broke me in a big way when people would turn their backs on me. I was alone at home, and then I was alone at school. It was like, okay, I don't have no friends. I don't have a family. I do. I don't feel connected to my family, and now I don't feel connected to the people that I've chosen either. Big pain. Big pain put me to this point where you create the wall, you close up, you become guarded, right? I got to a point where I said I wouldn't have any more best friends because I always ended up hurting. Having a best friend, being close to people, being connected to people always ended in pain. And I was so caught up that I wasn't acting in integrity, especially with the situation with taking the friend's boyfriend. I knew something had to change at that point. And honestly, I look back at myself at 14 being like, wow, I'm happy that as a 14-year-old, I was willing to recognize and put a self-esteem brick in the wall of my life to be able to be like, all right, now I have sense. This is like a foundational pillar moment, building block for my sense of self and self-esteem. And I'm happy that I was able to do that and take accountability, because it's easy to avoid these things and never confront them. I actually was wanting to change after that. I wasn't proud of what I did. I did not want to be someone who thirsted for male validation to the point that I would ruin a friendship over it. I eventually came clean about that even and told that old friend about the experience. I came so clean. I was done living in the dark, done thirsting for connection in that way. And I had to do something about it. I had to be honest more than anything, to tell the truth, because it pained me. It was so painful to be around that friend and keep this secret from her and be betraying her behind her back. I was willing to do whatever to feel connected to somebody. I think you yourself, if you're watching this, end up in a situation like that. I want you to know, like, you aren't a bad person, but some bad things have probably happened to you, which have pushed you to this point, right, of seeking connection in people that aren't right for you, or seeking love from people that you shouldn't be. All in all, the fact that my friend's boyfriend was willing to have both of us as his girlfriend, well, have me be the secret, and me being okay with being the secret, right? He would hang up with her and then get on the phone with me, and I had no problem with it. The fact that this was all happening was because I was hurting, right? But more so even on him, the fact that he condoned this and didn't have more honorability or wasn't more noble says a lot about him as well. This just wasn't a good person for me to be seeking connection with. He wasn't available, and I was seeking something from someone who was not available. My adults in my life at the time were not available. Do you see the pattern? Okay, so it wasn't something that I was proud of, but I forgave myself for it. And I'm able to see all the lessons and take those things and make myself a better person now. I've never allowed myself to be in that position again, but it took me dealing with all of this mess and reflecting on things in my adult life to realize that I was behaving this way. And then the subsequent choice to not have best friends anymore after that. And then I became a recluse. I chose to be alone for a lot of high school purposefully as a way, because that way I was able to ensure that I I was acting on my own impulses, right? That I couldn't be influenced by the friends around me. No one could hurt me. I felt that it made things better when in reality it probably didn't, right? I was isolating myself, right? I was isolating myself to try to ground, to try to like get connected to what I liked, to what I enjoyed. And I was really connected to those things, just really grounded, really like self-centered in a lot of ways. But people that I engage with, the outer world, one-to-one partnership came with pain a lot of time. And me isolating was a way to kind of protect myself from that. Whether effective or not, probably not. But you know, that's what I was doing. But ultimately, I just felt like people weren't stable. People weren't stable. I didn't feel comfortable, right? And I ended up actually going to 3 high schools. I went to one for all of freshman year and then a quarter of sophomore year. And then I did a semester at one school, just one semester. And then I did my last 2 years at a different high school. And transferring high schools only added to the feelings of instability, right? I had to start over 3 times. So starting over, like first high school, starting new, that's already a crazy experience. Then transferring in the middle of a school year, on top of that, crazy. And then transferring again, it was enough. By the time I got to the 3rd school, I was so burnt out with making connections that I didn't really want to anymore. I didn't want to try anymore. Lovely people found me at my 3rd high school, and I was able to feel a sense of safety with them over time. But essentially those experiences really shook me up, right? I didn't ever have a chance to see connections sustain. Thankfully though, I have some friends from those middle school days. Both of them actually betrayed me once, but came back around and apologized. Betrayed me multiple times actually, but came back. And as much as I tried to be open and be receptive and reestablish bonds with those people, it was never really the same for me. And that's the sucky part, because I was able to forgive, but my heart, I noticed, isn't always as open with some of the people that I'm speaking about. And I wish I could be better about that. And a lot of it, you know, we were just meant to grow apart and we weren't meant to be that close for this extended period of time. We're still in touch today and they're still my friends now, and mainly that's because like one of them just refused. She was like, I'm not gonna not be your friend. Like you're my best friend. We've been best friends, so we're gonna stay best friends. Our relationship has transformed a lot, but we've been friends for so long at this point that we just aren't separating anymore. Like there's no reason for us to separate. It definitely affected me feeling connected to people and feeling like loved, really. So that was the main issue that showed up in my life and kind of how things got solidified. So you got the home life that wasn't super comfy, that wasn't super connected. And then I start behaving in these weird ways. I denounce everybody. And then there's 1 or 2 girls that are just like, nah, we're still locked in. But then in my adult life, I realized I got actually really close to a person who's actually my best friend now. And there were so many nasty behaviors that ended up coming out, right? We would get so close, or we would get to this place where we would have a disagreement, and we never argued, honestly. We didn't argue that much, but when we did, I would always have such extreme responses like, oh, I know we're not going to be friends anymore. Like, you could just leave now. I would say things like that, or I would say stuff like, oh, I don't even know why you're trying to be here. We're not going to be friends. My friends don't last. I would speak from these places of trauma because I didn't know how to handle conflict. Every time there was conflict, I would get thrown away. Thank God that she was willing to be patient with me and show up, not let those things deter her from connecting with me. Because to this day now, we met when we were 21 and I'm 29. I'll actually be 30 in 2 weeks. But I'm so grateful that this friend never allowed me to push her away. We had such a great connection. We had lived together, would spend so much time together. I would pick her up and like we would talk for hours, and we shared so many things in common. We both are really, really good at astrology and just like connected over that. And we still do to this day. I'm grateful that she was so open to me. And we've gone through a lot of different instances where we've had to check ourselves and be open and transparent with ourselves. And it was really her kindness, her compassion that allowed me to experience like what friendship looks like long term. And she had been hurt so many times too. She has experienced abandonment in the same ways. And we didn't trauma bond over that, but we had similar wounds. So we were able to like see each other. And that friendship is really the first place where I felt fully seen by somebody. I've only been in 2 relationships, but my last relationship that I was in, I actually got cheated on. I can't tell the whole story now. That video's planned to come out eventually, but needless to say, this person was super stable on paper, but emotionally unavailable. Again, I don't want to say I didn't know what it felt like to have a sense of openness and connection, or a sense of lovingness or sweetness, gentleness, softness. And the crazy thing is I always showed up as that. I have a very warm presence and I have this warm personality about me and like sweetness. Like I try to be as sweet as I can to everyone. It wasn't hard for me to accept love from people. It wasn't hard for me to have other people be nice to me. In that time in my life, I just, for some reason, it was enough for me at the time. And I grew out of that, right? I constantly wanted more and more emotional depth because now I realize about myself that I need this sense of connection, a sense of depth, a sense of merging and spiritual connectedness with a partner, that support, that openness, that lovingness. And I constantly felt dissatisfied in that. And it didn't end well. Spoiler alert. I let that go and I was able to learn when I get the signs of someone not open to me or not able to go as deep as I'm wanting to go or able to hold the space for me that I'm willing to hold for them. When I get those signs and when I have those feelings, I can listen to them the first time. I can't be so afraid of being abandoned that I abandon myself. And it kind of led me to where I am now, to where I'm actually able to experience like this wonderful connection with someone where it's mutually loving, mutually compassionate, mutually beneficial, actually able to attract more people to me that embody this loving and sweet style of relating, where that wasn't always my experience. I'm actually going to look at my chart from the sidereal whole sign perspective. I know, shocker. I'm going to show some of my astrology with you all just so that you can see astrological themes that show up in my birth chart to kind of give some context. So I have my birth chart pulled up here. I kind of want to just get into it here. So tropical Pisces sun, Taurus moon, Aquarius rising. I sidereally am an Aquarius rising, Danishta. Aquarius rising with Aquarius sun and Saturn conjunct in the first house. If you watched my last video talking about how people hate being reminded of how far they are from their potential, you'll know I talked about Saturn in the first house in that video towards the end, in the latter section when I was doing an analysis of Beyonce's chart. But I actually have Saturn in the first as well. I have a 12th house stelly. If you include the outer planets. Most of the time, I don't take outer planets into consideration unless they're conjunct a personal planet or even an angle, but Sun, Moon, Ascendant, Mars, Venus, Mercury, Jupiter even. Jupiter and Saturn aren't personal planets, but I'll say they're planets that you can view from the naked eye, right? They're close enough, but outer planets are going to be Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, okay? So I have Venus in the 12th. Venus and Mercury in the 12th house in sidereal Capricorn. I have a sidereal Mars in the 6th house in Cancer. So I have Moon in the 3rd house with the South Node. Moon K2. Let me please with my brain rot. I have Rahu in the 9th, and then I have Jupiter in the 10th conjunct the midhaven with Pluto in the 10th as well. So let's get into this. Moon K2 in the 3rd. You put Moon in the 3rd house. Clearly I like to yap. I love to learn. Right? I feel most comfortable. I have sidereal Aries moon and I have moon with the South Node. So the South Node is something that strips, right? It's the body without the head. You have Rahu and Ketu always exist in tandem with each other. They exist together. So Rahu will always be exactly opposite in the zodiac where it is with Ketu. So if you see in this chart here, you have Rahu 12 degrees Libra. You have Ketu opposite of Libra is Aries. So we have Libra 9th house, Aries 3rd house. If Rahu is in Libra, K2 is always going to be in Aries. They will never not be opposite of each other. So Rahu is the head, right? The head without the body. K2, the South Node, is the body without the head. So I have my moon without a head. This headless energy. So if Rahu is consumption, eating, the head without the body, right? Able to consume and is always concerned with achieving, going to get something for the world. K2 has this spiritual influence, this bodily grounded, whereas Rahu is consumption and obsession. K2 is contentment and sometimes to a fault, right? So, but it's also this stripping influence. It spiritualizes the individual. You're not concerned with the material realm, right? So you put the moon with the South Node. Granted, it's going to give an intuitive ability, right? It's going to give like this spiritual component to the moon in the 3rd. Information kind of just comes down to me from like a past life, sure, right? That's the positive of it. But you put the K2 with the moon is a gentle planet, right? It's our mother and it's also our sense of comfort, right? What makes us feel nourished, what makes us feel good. So you put the moon with K2, you're stripping the mother from the native. Mother is stripped from me. Emotionally stripped, emotionally alone, emotionally isolated. You put K2 there, right? Headless. Emotionally, just like in this bodily experience, but also very sensitive, perceptive, but taking the emotions away from me. And even if you want to get into lordship, if we have moon originally ruled by Cancer, 4th house is also traditionally ruled by Cancer. So my 4th house is Taurus, right? 4th house having to do with the mother, just like the moon would have to do with the mother because they're both associated with Cancer. You have the 4th house lord going to the 12th house, Venus going to the 12th house. Mother's love, that nurturing, that connection, that mental peace, that security is going far away from me, is hidden from me because 12th house is what is hidden from us. 8th house is what we hide, right? But 12th house is what is hidden from us. So for me, just like with the story I told with my whole trauma, abandonment issues or whatever, you have Venus in the 12th, love, creativity, connection is hidden from me, right? It's in the 12th house, it's behind the ascendant. It's the farthest it can go from the ascendant, right? Love is hidden from me. I'm getting it. I feel spiritually connected, right? The 12th house, the ethereal, the other realms, spiritual realms, love, creativity, is divine. It's a divine experience. I know it should be. It's spiritual, and I want to be deeply emotionally connected to someone. Absolutely. But it's also hidden from me. My camera battery died, but we're back in action. So looking back in the chart, I remember I was talking about the 12th house. I have Venus in the 12th house. So if we look at it from the lordship of having Taurus on the 4th house cusp, we have Venus going into the 12th house. Mother's love is hidden from me. That emotional comfort, emotional stability is hidden from me. Or I have to go far away, literally physical, far distances to get this sense of comfort, get this sense of stability, this sense of nurturing. This sense of emotional stability is not achieved in a very easy way. It's hidden from me. And then you put Moon in the 3rd house with the South Node, the mother's love is stripped from me, right? So we have that. Taking a look, we have Aquarius ascendant, and then we have Sun conjunct Saturn in the 1st house. Sun or Saturn both have to do with authority figures in the life. Sun has to do with father and that more masculine presence in our life and how we shine in the world. I have a conjunct Saturn, so that's limited. It's stripped away, right? You see the pattern? So both of the luminaries, Sun representing father, while Saturn also represents father as well. Moon representing the mother has become stripped away. Both of the luminaries are what we call in astrology, we would say afflicted. Sun conjunct Saturn, the father is restricted from us. Maybe he's far away from me. It turns out he was both. We don't have that strong of a relationship, and that's something I've had to work on and heal within myself over time, right? Sun conjunct Saturn, so there's all these feelings of shame and issues with self-expression, right? Because Sun is how we express ourselves. It's how we take up space in the world. It's how we shine. And then the 1st house also has to do with similar themes, traditionally being ruled by Aries. Put Saturn there. Aries is a Mars-ruled sign. They put Saturn in the 1st house. You end up with this restricted self-expression, blocked self-expression, delayed self-expression, suppressed self-expression, double time. You put Saturn in the 1st, and then you put Saturn conjunct the Sun. Put them both in the 1st. So I will say there are elements of that 1st house Sun being able to shine, right? I've always loved performing. I've always loved being a part of some type of creative endeavor. That's been natural for me since I was a child. I've been a dancer for a lot of my life in some capacity, and then even now, like wanting to be seen on the internet. Like I don't necessarily want to always hide away, right? But there's sometimes a lot of a mental battle that I have to go through in order to get myself feeling like I'm worthy of being seen. But not so much anymore, right? Now it just manifests similar to how I talked about in my previous video about wanting to feel prepared, wanting to work hard towards things, wanting to sustain something. And also acknowledging here that we have 1st house Lord in the 1st house. So we have 1st house Lord Saturn in its own house, in its own sign, because traditionally Saturn rules Aquarius as well as Capricorn. Both of those planets are ruled by Saturn. So you put Saturn, my chart Lord, right? So the Lord of your 1st house in astrology, or the planet that rules the sign of the 1st house. So my 1st house, the Sun, and my 1st house is Aquarius, right? The planet that rules that sign is Saturn. So now Saturn rules my chart. Saturn is my chart ruler. He's my chart Lord. So anytime you have 1st Lord in the 1st, or any planet in its own sign, that means it's in its own house, it's going to be particularly strong. I have 1st Lord in the 1st. It's making my body strong. It's making me want to spend a lot of time investing into myself and building my self-esteem, but that doesn't come without challenge, right? Because it takes time, right? Mastery, but also there's an overcoming of this feeling of lack because Saturn restricts, Saturn delays things. Having to sit with myself and feel like, okay, where do I lack? And acknowledging those things, transmuting them so that I can shine brighter, right? Because my Sun isn't just sitting there by itself with no other planets touching it, or maybe Venus or Mercury touching it, right? I have Saturn on the Sun, so it's restricting the Sun's light. It's blocking it a little bit. And let's take it even further. So we have the 7th house, which rules the house of one-to-one partnerships, like marriage, commitments, business partnerships. It's just how you relate to others, right? So I have this 7th house is ruled by Leo. Leo is ruled by the Sun. So my 7th house Lord, right, would be Sun. I have that in the 1st house. 7th house Lord is in the 1st house. So I have no issues attracting people to me, right? There's some delays, there's some blockages, there's some limitations, there's some hardship that comes with partnership in the early part of life, right? For me, for myself, dealing with other people. There's situations where, because 7th Lord, right, the 7th house ruler is the Sun, is with Saturn, blocking it. So Saturn is already making 7th aspect, looking at the 7th house, creating an aspect to it. But the 1st house Lord, Saturn, or Saturn itself, is also conjunct the 7th Lord. So it's like this, my 7th house is getting 2 Saturnian influences, right? From the conjunction of 1st house and 7th house Lord, right? Also from 7th house aspect. Saturn is looking at the 7th house like, hey, like directly opposing. And in astrology, we call that an opposition aspect. Saturn Saturn is casting 7th aspect. It's opposing my 7th house. So it's going to create a delay in relationships anyway, right? Long-lasting relationships are favorable for me because Saturn rules time, long-lasting things, diligent, sustained effort, right? Of course, it could just be when you're a younger person. Saturn also rules old people, right? So the older you get, the better this aspect gets. The harder you work over time, or the more consistent you are over time, the better it gets. That's something I've had to come to acknowledge, right? I feel like now, ironically, so for those of you that don't know, tropically, right, Saturn is in Pisces. I am a tropical Pisces. So if we put this in tropical astrology, right, I'm a Pisces sun. My birthday is March 6th. So I'm a Pisces tropically, but I'm using a different zodiac calculation. So from sidereal perspective, Saturn is currently, right, in Aquarius. I'm having my first Saturn return. Ironically, I'm feeling more confident to express myself. I'm coming back to this YouTube channel that I had years ago. I'm trying again, right? Sustained effort over time. Coming back, showing up with that Saturnian drive, right? Giving myself that energy and that effort. I feel a little more grounded now, I feel more centered. I feel the most like myself than I feel like I ever have. I feel very connected to who I am now, so I feel ready to share now. When planets are conjunct, you're going to have to satisfy both of them, especially Saturn, right? You're going to have to do the hard thing, the diligent thing, the dutiful thing, the steadfast, consistent thing first, the planning, the meticulous part first, in order to get that planet to come out, right? Because Saturn is just going to block it and restrict it until he gets fed. Feed Saturn or feed whatever planet, right? Let's say you got Rahu with Venus, right? Feed the Rahu, give it something to be obsessed about, or feed the Venus, like feed both planets so that the other one can rest a little bit. So I wanted to just pull this up to show you what this looked like in my own chart. Not to mention the 12th house Mercury being misunderstood, my communication sometimes being hidden from me. I've done great in school my whole life, labeled as smart, and that would in turn like separate me from my peers in one way or another, which created its own sense of complexity with my identity, not feeling like I aligned to anyone around me. With the 12th house placements, like other people are understanding me. Sometimes my communication is just like not what I think it is. I have much more of a command over it now, thankfully. However, if we're looking at the planets here, I have Mercury opposite Mars in the 6th, and then they're both squaring the moon in the 3rd. That's called a T-square. So we've got moon as the apex of this T-square. In my 3rd house in Aries, I've got Mercury in the 12th in Capricorn, and then Mars in the 6th house in Cancer. So Mercury and Mars are opposing, and then Mercury squares the moon and Mars also squares the moon. So there's some discrepancy or some frustration, some irritation with communicating how I feel, and also not coming off too aggressive, right? Because we have Mars as our aggression, our anger, how we go about things, how we move through the world, right? How we act, right? Our actions. So I act in a very meticulous 6th house way, very routine, very calculated way most times. That's how I express my energy. That's how I go about things. That's how I attack things. But my moon is in the 3rd. I got this mind that's going with K2, right? So there's a little bit of a subdued emotional nature, but also this talkative presence, like wanting to express, sometimes talking headlessly, thinking moon K2. And when I was younger, ironically, I would always finish all my work. I would have high marks, right? High grades, but there would always be the comment, talks too much in class. So it was always a thing I got, just talking headlessly. And it was hard for me to stop talking. And even now, like I have to work on not interrupting people when they speak. I do better when I'm around neurodivergent people because interrupting people is like welcome because it shows excitement, but making sure I give them the space and time. But my mind is working really fast because in Vedic astrology and sidereal astrology, the moon rules the mind. Mercury is connected to the mind, but it's more so the communication, right? So you put my mind, the moon, in the 3rd house of communication, squaring in a hard aspect, like fighting with Mercury, my actual planet of communication, right? So they're already squaring up. So expressing how I feel was difficult. It was frustrating to express how I feel. It brings me agitation to express a lot of how I feel, right? And then we have Mercury opposite to Mars. Sometimes how I feel, right? My aggression, my anger, I have a hard time expressing it, but sometimes it comes off aggressively. It can offend people because if you have Mercury and Mars, they're opposing each other. Cancer, Capricorn are sister signs, so they oppose each other. They are 7th away. They are 7 places away from each other. Other people, 7 houses away, the other person, remember how I talked about the 7th house being ruled by the other? That's other people, one-to-one relationship. So when I communicate, other people receive that as aggression sometimes, and I've had to be mindful of that. Thankfully, right, I have Mercury and Venus in the same sign. They're rather far away from each other, but in Vedic astrology, we would say that these two planets are conjunct, right? Conjunction is just the 0-degree aspect. Mercury and Venus in the same sign. It's helping that Mercury a little bit to be more gentle, to be more sweet, to be more graceful, to be more diplomatic in my way of speaking and in my way of approaching. And I think you can see it here now, the way I'm able to talk to the camera and do it in a rather cohesive way. Hopefully y'all understand what I'm saying, because if you didn't, wow. I just yapped just to not have the comprehension factor. You know, it helps it out a little bit, but there were undeniably these issues there, right? You got this T-square with all these planets, that discomfort, and then I have that Mars trine to Jupiter really tightly within 1 degree of each other. Jupiter in the 10th house conjunct the MC, so I feel very comfortable in teaching positions. I've taught dance. I was literally a high school teacher for 2 years. I feel very comfortable in teaching positions, just expressing information, imparting knowledge, sharing wisdom. That's something that I'm passionate about and feels very natural to me. And I have a lot of energy for that, right? The Jupiter is trine the Mars. And I also have Jupiter in the 10th house, right? Jupiter in the 10th house, I'm known, my public image is Jupiterian. Also Scorpionic, right? For a lot of people that, like on my social media presence and stuff, I can kind of take the observer role, the more researchy role. Only in this space do I really share openly. I used to on Instagram, but I don't have Instagram anymore. If I ever get that account back, I'll make sure I incorporate it into my YouTube videos, but I digress. So the public perceives me Scorpionic, right? Rather intense, maybe a little secretive, not as open, right? But observant, more private. And I do carry myself that way. I care very much about the way that I come off and the way that I'm perceived. And I want to come off knowledgeable. That's that Jupiter in the 10th house, right? And I like being in a teacher role and just sharing what I know. My favorite phrase is like, knowledge is best shared. The knowledge you have is for you, but more than anything, it's meant for you to share with others. This energy shows up where I want to express, and I have like this energy to express, to show up in this way. Not everyone just wants, when you're in conversation with people, do they want you to preach to them? And I'm feeding this planet, right? I'm feeding the Jupiter and that Mars aspect energy and my Mercury energy. I'm feeding those planets, like giving it a place to express. And the moon in the 3rd, moon in a communication house, feeding it, giving myself the platform, the energy, the space to talk, so that maybe in my relationships, I can have a little less hyper energy, a little calmer energy, so that I am not interrupting people, right? And I'm not trying to preach to everybody, because I have my platform to preach, right? I have this, my channel, where I can do whatever the heck I want, right? But yeah, I don't think I need to go any deeper about this chart today. I'm sure when it's relevant, I'll bring my chart back up again. But hopefully this was a helpful video talking about abandonment issues and trauma and how things show up, with a little bit of chart reading at the end. A lot of the times astrology is reflective of real life events, and I love the overlap of psychology and mental health with astrology. It's a great tool. But yes, I hope you all enjoyed this video. I have talked a great deal. I will see you in my next one, but until next time, bye.